you saw early days, it was cutesy, it was interesting. Now the models are catching up, and it's just like, wow, I can't keep up with it. As organizational leaders, you really have to adopt this mindset of truly continuous improvement. That it's not a modernization. It's really that journey. You're not going to ever arrive there. That you've just got to be putting these pillars. And again, all the more reason that if organizations have some boat anchors or some tech debt that they've inherited, you really have to figure out how you fold that in and that next iteration, get in front of it. At the pace that we're going, the pace of change, I mean, who knows what it's going to be like this time next year? Hopefully you and I get back together and compare notes, because it is incredible the speed that this is going. It's just phenomenal.
Welcome to 5 Minutes, your quick dive into the wide-ranging world of insurance, technology, and leadership. I'm Miguel Edwards, and I'll be your guide as we explore these topics that are transforming not just the insurance industry, but the business world at large. Along with sharing observations I've made over the span of my career in insurance, technology, and operations, I'll be chatting with some of the brightest minds in business and leadership. Whether you're a seasoned executive or a rising star, an industry expert, or just curious about how technology is revolutionizing insurance, this is your perfect spot for your weekly dose of insights. This is 5 Minutes. Hey, and welcome to another episode of 5 Minutes. Thank you so much for joining us. And I am joined by another awesome guest here. I've got Jake Sloan with me, who's the Vice President of Global Insurance and Healthcare at Appian. Jake has had an incredible career, CIO roles, COO roles, a fantastic career that has gotten him to this point. And I'm so excited for a fantastic conversation at this most exciting period of technology, particularly insurance. And we're going to jump into a really great discussion. Jake, thank you so much for spending time with us and being here.
My God, thank you so much. It's great to be here and excited. I was catching up. Admittedly, this is the first time we're meeting, and so I watched a little of your background. I was like, man, how did I not know this guy beforehand? Your energy and everything else is great. So excited. Awesome. Well, now I'm looking forward to a great discussion. So Jake, to kind of get us started off, give me an idea of kind of a little bit of the tail end of your career trajectory, what landed you at Appian, and kind of what you're excited most about your role and what you're doing now. No, it's a great question. So if you look first, kind of like two chapters, right? First chapter was in telecom technology and part of some of the early days was Sprint and innovation. And I really pride myself in first ever, never been done before. And the second half has been in insurance technology. And so grew up in the likes of Farmers Insurance and Aon and others. And I found myself growing up largely through an operations role, going out there trying to do these first ever, never been done before. And it was largely human centric. We have all this great tech, yet you couldn't take advantage of it. And so I was now one of those individuals on the other side of the aisle, kind of pointing fingers at, from the business side of IT saying, hey, why don't you do better? And then I found myself table clearance. I could go be in that role, and careful what you wish for, because I don't know if I would advise my kids to go that path. But yeah, that's how I found myself sitting across the aisle. And then most recently, it's amazing. It's been 10 years ago now. I was a CIO at Aon Specialty Flood Unit, went through an RFP process, looked at a number of vendors, classic situation, growth through acquisition, needling out the tech stack. I met Appian, and the joke is they threw me in the trunk. And here we are about 7.5 years later, and so grateful to be part of the Appian team and be part of this segment. It's just an incredible time.
That's awesome. Well, and you say incredible time. We are in an incredible time now. And I've commented in some recent discussions with people that I've always to some extent complained, if you will, about how slow insurance has been to adopt technology. And now it just seems like we are moving. And there's so much more out there. We've got the rise of the insurtech. We are at an incredible time, an incredible inflection point. I know you guys are on the forefront. Talk to me a little bit about, as you start thinking about all of these forces that are reshaping insurance, and whether it's process automation, low code, no code, AI. Pick whatever your flavor. Give us your perspective on what are we looking at right now in terms of this point that we're at and what's to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, we really are. If you want to think really big about the industrial revolution, like all the comparisons with where we are with AI and like the deep sea, the protein folds and all this. I mean, insurtech continues to just stand, to rise above and the the industry as a whole. And if you look at where we're at, what we see is it's this growing divide, just like academically you hear about, with what AI is going to do and what it is doing. We see this divide between insurers that have kick this can from a perspective. And we've been on spreadsheets, we've been on email. It's been good enough, if you will. Yet here we are with some of the most incredible technology to really, further scale the, insurance experience. Yet others that are struggling now to adopt, and they can't make up, that lost time fast enough. So, kind of where we're at, we sit in this middle, for your audience base. Appian is a cloud-based, platform as a service. And, we have pre-built accelerators around underwriting and claims. And we bring those inside organizations, and the ability to then, go from those spreadsheets to the cloud. And where we're really at, is really helping, organizations with the change culture, right? So,
Right.
I joke a lot about how technology doesn't fit culture, yet culture is really what makes or breaks the technology go forward. Right. And I see in some of your kind of interviews as well that, it can't be, looked past, because it will make or break you. And so we see this kind of this crossroads where these organizations are really trying to go faster, yet unsure of what the future looks like. And our organization is really rallying around both, helping bring those different change culture, kind of that structure in, but largely through, our platform and our pre-built solutions for insurance.
Jake, one of the things that you talk about is kind of where you guys sit, and obviously encouraging clients to take advantage of all of the availability of modern technology that's out there. One of the things that I struggle a lot with, especially with my clients, is I tend to work in the mutual space and kind of that kind of more mid-market space. And man, we are anchored by legacy technology. It's there seems to be, kind of a paying for the sins of our past in perpetuity. And so what are you guys doing? And what kind of advice do you have for carriers that are stuck with these legacy boat anchors and wanting to take advantage of newer solutions like what you bring to the table, but feel that there's just a too long of a road to hoe to get there?
Yeah, it's a great, and anchor is a great word, because I think of the word boat anchor, right? It's like drives you down. Yeah. So, a couple of thoughts on that. When we see these situations come up, we see organizations that, want to take the, agile iterative approach. And, and we believe, that's the best path forward. The contemplation of rip and replace, it just brings in, too much risk, unless you're in, there's a handful of scenarios that might make sense. Yet largely it's the iterative approach. And so when we see these organizations that, they start off maybe well-intended, then they get caught up in maybe different technology vendors that, maybe, dangle these big carrots out there, and they think, oh, well, we got to go big, in contrast to just getting started, and what's that saying? Progress is the enemy of perfection, or
perfection is the enemy of good, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so we see that often where, they start off maybe well-intended, yet somehow, either through, taking more bites of the apple, they want to just go bigger, in contrast to, don't lose sight that, just a little bit of incremental, benefit, weeks and weeks at a time, before you know it, you've made massive progress. So, and again, I don't want to belabor the culture component, because that sins of the past. They didn't do anything. They probably got by okay. And excuse me, maybe if it was a profitability situation, or maybe there was some kind of like turning point. Yet now here you are, that this contemplation for AI and just how fast AI is going. And, we don't talk about AI in the hyperbole context. We talk about it very specifically in a process aligned to, say, underwriting and claims. And so that's where these organizations with these anchor situations are really struggling the most, because they're trying to make up a lot of lost time. I used to tell my teams when I was at Aon, it's about paying the airplane while it's in flight. You don't have the luxury of landing it. You don't have the luxury of, you've got to figure it out. You've got to do with, the best of what you got on the vehicle, and make the most of it.
Yeah, I love that. I want to come back and double click a little bit on the concept that you just mentioned around AI and process, because that's really fascinating. But before we do that, I want to beat up this legacy thing just a little bit more. The horse is not dead yet. There's this kind of mindset shift that I'm trying to get my head wrapped around, even for myself and in our own firm, that the concept of modernization is dead. There is no kind of endpoint. It's a constant evolutionary mindset. And I'm sitting here myself struggling as an example. I mean, you guys are a commercial user of AI. I use AI in terms of ChatGPT. I mess around with NAN. I do some agentic flows, and I can't keep up with the model development. I don't know if it's my age or what, but it's just moving so fast. And so how do we get the industry? How do we get our legacy mindset, these cultures, to realize that there's no endpoint. It's just continuous.
It is. And so, quick aside, personal story. I'm similar to you. I'm a technologist, like to dabble, and I've had, access to these tools on a personal level. I do work with, Avila University. I'm on their AI advisory board. We just had a board meeting last night, so it's very timely. And we were just talking about this as a professional group that, you saw early days. It was cutesy. It was interesting. Now the models are catching up, and it's just like, wow, I can't keep up with it. And there was this bumper sticker I had as a kid growing up that was like, life is a journey, not a destination, right? And that's the analogy I would come back to with you, is that I really believe as organizational leaders, you really have to adopt this mindset of truly continuous improvement, that it's not a modernization. It's really that journey, and you're not going to ever arrive there, that you've just got to be putting these pillars. And again, all the more reason that, if organizations have some boat anchors or some tech debt that they've inherited, you really have to figure out how you fold that in, and that next iteration, get in front of it, and the next iteration, because at the pace that we're going, the pace of change, I mean, who knows what it's going to be like this time next year? Hopefully you and I get back together and compare notes, because it is incredible the speed that this is going. It's just phenomenal.
No, that's exactly right. So with that, let's go into kind of in process the work that you guys are doing, and I can't help but ask the question. As you guys start looking at AI and various forms of automation to put into the underwriting or claims process, how are you dealing with potential situations where you're looking at a legacy process and it's just kind of like, there's only but so much lipstick we have to put on this pig here, guys. But, how are you helping customers think about just the reinvention of the process itself?
Yes, it's a great question. So a couple of things to kind of baseline this. First, as an organization, we come from the place that we don't believe AI is going to, replace or supplant, the human in some capacity, right? So when you think about, the incredible organizations that are out there, deeply dedicated underwriters and claims professionals, we see that, AI, no matter how advanced it gets, it's all around the organization and the human in the loop, if you will. And, these incredibly dedicated colleagues. And you come from, large legacy carriers, myself included. When you're out there and you're sitting there in the front line, one of my favorite things was to sit out there and listen to calls and be there. And you quickly realize, how your colleagues are creating that differentiated service experience, yet your technology underneath wasn't necessarily. And so that's kind of the place that we come from, is that, through the Appian solution and through the different, capabilities, one of the capabilities we have inside is what we call data fabric. And it's the ability to orchestrate from disparate sources. And that's not unique to Appian, yet Appian's is very mature. But if you look at that as an enabling capability, you sit that across the top of your legacy, core admin, your legacy raters. That's where we say AI and process specifically, you're going to, it's not realistic to have a complex enterprise, of medium to large, contention, not have multiple disparate systems, right? And if you think about that model colleague that creates this incredible service experience, it's the contextualization of that colleague that helps bring all that together, right? They know what systems to go look at. They know what, the job aid isn't saying that needs to happen. And so I guess, that is kind of where we're coming from, is, how do you take that contextualization, take the most archaic that's not, microservice API, to take the most modern that is microservice API enabled, and then bring, AI into the process very expertly at that point in time, extract maximal value, and then continue the process, whether it be, something that's maybe, light, medium weight, capability that you're looking to straight through process. Maybe it's all that administratively burdensome, work to get somebody a complex claim served up with a, recommended next best action. But yet those are some of the areas that we continue to focus on.
There's something you said in there that got me thinking about talent. And I guess we could talk about either the talent within IT, kind of that you would kind of bring along to work with solutions like yours, or even the talent just kind of in the operating workforce. What considerations are your customers needing to really think about here, kind of coming up as these technologies are taking a more front and center role in that in-process work, such that it matches with the talent and the capabilities that they have?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I think you have to be intentional with your talent programs, right? So kind of go off the path briefly here from a technology perspective and think about, what is your succession plans? What are you doing to grow and develop your talent? And, you think about it, the industry knows that, we have an aging out, situation where, good talent is aging out. We know that we, have somewhat of a situation where it's not, maybe attracting the newest generations. There's a lot of good programs. There's a lot of good progress. Mm-hmm. Yet if you look at those kind of, two scenarios, and you ask yourself, I personally believe that, you hire for potential, you train the technical, and high performers have choices. And so when you want those best of best of best, you have to start with, how are you experimenting as an organization? How are you, testing and learning? And so if you're talking about in the context of, say, the technical side, Copilot and all that it brings, to assist with development, you want to be able to have, some of your dedicated colleagues. And I don't want to, put an age on it, because, that dedication and that innovation mindset, to me, doesn't have an age. Maybe it's got gray hair, maybe it doesn't, but it's a situation where those colleagues are really, hungry to learn and really to grow in their technical capability. And then go to the business side. I think it's a similar situation when you start looking at, how organizations open their mind and say, wow, so I'm devoted to the craft of underwriting, and look at what these tools are doing to enable me, in contrast to the fear. And the fear is founded. I mean, I don't want to look past that. Right. You have the regulation, you have a lot of risk. Yet when you bring both sides together, one of our largest clients that's just really pushing both the culture in a good way, pushing the technology in a good way. I've really been proud of what they've done, with a test and learn, where they've equipped 10 of their underwriters with the newest capability, and they've got the legacy kind of processes and systems, and letting those individuals that are well respected in that group then transfer knowledge and convey transparently, like, this is what the new system looks like. And I just think that's an example, though, of how you can just really start to change the culture to be in that growth mindset, really embracing those learning moments, but also saying, how can we learn from maybe others' missteps along the way, and work from there.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. I was reminded while you were chatting about, you talk about attracting talent. I've got a client, and we were reviewing their IT risk register. And one of the items in the IT risk register is our inability to attract BAs that are willing to learn green screen.
Yes.
And I was like, but where is the problem here, folks? I mean, is it that you can't attract these VAs, or the fact that you still have green screen and you're needing VAs? Exactly.
And I, we see it often. I'm just like, wow, that is, what was the ROI on a system that ends up living 50 years? It's like, wow, we thought live 10, maybe live 50. No, all kidding aside. And I think that's too where, you have those scenarios like that come up. That is one of the other sides of AI in particular, where, whether it be emulation, or whether it be these scenarios that, maybe that organization now can find someone that's willing to use AI in the context of a green screen, and being able to. So it just gives you a lot of flexibility that, that I think really benefits those organizations, because, like, we all win when insurers become more modern, right, when we can have, hyper personalized products, lower, loss ratios, and just keep moving forward as a industry.
Yeah, you just mentioned ROI, Jake, and so one of the challenges that I'm often faced with trying to help clients through is really articulating the ROI of these mammoth investments that they have to make. I mean, they've been running P&Ls that have had fully depreciated assets on them now for decades, and so you're looking at this maybe perhaps artificial kind of expense ratio. Now all of a sudden you've got to go dump $40 million, $50 million in a modernization, and everything just gets all out of whack. How do you help communicate the kind of the ROI? Are there particular kind of maybe kind of internal or external KPIs that you got to be focused on, even beyond just the just the P&L? Give me some thoughts on that.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's really kind of one of the key. I'm sure you see this. It's one of the key contributing factors to complacency, if you will.
Yes.
When we start to kick off these mammoth undertakings, it's an organizational drain. The organization wasn't looking for something else to do because it was already overprescribed. And so, yes, we have, in fact, internally, a value engineering function. This is a team that we have dedicated specifically to the value creation, to assisting, organizations. So our role, my role is an industry leader. There was typically a former C-level executive across Appian's verticals. And then we have us paired up with, our value engineers that are also, industry experts combined with that value focus. And it's really, if you kind of go and unpack, what eventually rolls up to a 40 or $50 million investment, and we can't look, we can't look past, we can't, can't change the past. All we can do is look forward. And that's where being able to put together, both the ROI, which one could poke holes and argue is academic, right? But then let's align that very tactically speaking with deliveries that are in weeks, not in years, and we're full agile. And, if you look as an organization, we deliver major features in 8 to 10 weeks. And I mean, measurable ROI. And so when you can see that, and that's the joy of it, when you can start, small yet high, impact. When I say small, we're not talking about some cutesy use case that they've already benefited with, RPA or something. We're talking about, major, feature function, yet being able to deliver that 8 to 10 weeks. Then you go back to the ROI balance sheet and you just start circling those areas that, we're within. And I am very, very pleased and very proud of our organization in the context of how we continue to say we believe we can achieve X, and we typically overachieve Y. And of course, there's been some missteps, yet that's opportunity for us to bring back into our product team, bring back into our organization and say, hey, when we tuned this model and we expected this result, how do we not achieve it? And that's one of the things I personally this day really thrive with the Appian commitment, is that we're just maniacal about the experience, and that's pervasive in our culture. So
that's interesting. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, because you got me intrigued with something that you said. You said, well, it's not this like kind of cutesy, RPA oriented use cases. We're talking about some big, hairy things that we're tackling.
Yes.
Give me an example of a big, hairy thing that you guys have tackled. I mean, obviously not in explicit, detail, but enough that I can get my hands around it.
Absolutely. Think about complex reinsurance claims ingestion, right?
Okay.
Think about all the complexity that goes with big, and these are typically, older files. There's, packed in, we've seen, 500, 700 page, spreadsheets that come rolling in. Or think about this in the complex, very, very complex commercial specialty underwriting space. When you're thinking about, a master property addendum and the support addendums that have, 800 to 1,000 different properties listed, how today in the current state, we will typically see that there's either nearshore or offshore teams that are devoted to that function, just the input, right? Exactly. You nailed it. Then you bring that in, and sometimes that goes circular. Oh, this should go to this team, this should go to this team. We got to get that sorted. Oh, that goes over to this team. And before you know it, again, it's at the time the decisions were made, they were likely best in class for a return on investment. Yet over time, they start to get, fragmented, and some of these kind of start to go circular. Then all the while, these use cases sit on top of that same green screen technology we were just poking fun at. Mm-hmm. And so, oh, by the way, these organizations want to go to cloud-based, best in class, core admin. So how do you just put that in a box and slap an 8-week sticker on it, right? And that's exactly where our team can come in with the pre-built solutions. Take, for instance, very complex reinsurance claims, be able to provide material benefit that, both provides labor relief to the operations organization using our, Gen AI, extractions and contextualizations and, intent, align that to, a straight through process model that, accelerates efficiency. Let's say 60%. That's very typical to go from a pre and post. So if the pre was 20% straight through, the post is going to be 80% straight through in 8 weeks when we turn it on and go live. And then from there, that aligns to that legacy system. Now we go to the next phase. And we go to the next phase. And that's why if you look, in particular at Appian's customer retention and our radiation capability, it's one of the best in class because of that, the ability that, Appian customers love Appian and then continue to buy more Appian.
I want to talk a little bit about perhaps a point of friction, because there's been a topic that I've been talking about with a couple of colleagues. I just did a webinar with Ron Hamilton over at BMS Re's, the Chief Compliance Officer. We're talking to a gentleman named Anthony Habayeb, who's he has a product that looks at AI compliance, and then Carol Williams, and she's over at ERM, and we were having this really awesome discussion about the concept, especially when it comes to models that have been built by third parties, mm-hmm. that carriers are leveraging. The carriers still own the risk for the stuff that they build, as well as the stuff that they use from the third parties. And
Yes.
and we're trying to have this conversation around what do carriers need to be doing to be able to support and substantiate the various diligence that's required for model testing and kind of, just really truly understanding explainability, all of those things that ultimately regulators are probably going to start asking for. They haven't necessarily promulgated anything, but it's coming. And so,
Yeah.
so what's your approach to that? And how are you helping carriers kind of think through that dynamic?
Yes, that's the question du jour. I
Yeah.
believe right now, as we talked before about the speed and how we're personally seeing this, that's the question that I think should be on everyone's mind, frankly, because we will go back to the monolith and slow the organizations down, the industry down, if we can't unpack those models and have the transparency and depth we need to ensure they're fair, accurate, and consistently applied. Yet the speed at which the models are creating, so chicken and the egg, right?
Yeah.
So to get to your question, as far as how we're helping with that, we are really using our fabric to really go backwards and to link to all the different model sources, right?
Okay.
And so if you think about the model sources, how they're created, and that's why if you kind of again eating our own dog food here, when we go rapidly internally, we do it with transparency, and so fabric ties to the sources. Workflow and case management allow us to give the comments along the way, so that when we get through there, and then anything that flows to the platform, you're able to see that that transaction and that transparency. So where we're helping the industry from that perspective is to give them tools that they can build the models and the processes that they're using to create the models, and then when they have deviance in the model structure, to be able to flag that as an alert, give it a range, red, amber, green, be able to flow it as an automated workflow item back to someone for clarification. Maybe you pull the model, park it for, the moment. Maybe you queue to go, force work, to a manual queue for, for evaluation. It's early days transparently, yet that's some of the stuff that we're really working through as an industry team, and how we can help keep the speed and the accuracy, yet unpack and give more transparency. And then, we're a global organization. So whether you're talking about the, EU, privacy laws, whether you're talking about, APRA in Australia, we're working as best we can through our local partners there too.
Yeah, that's awesome. You guys have a great advantage because seeing it happen kind of globally, and I would offer, I think we see things happen in Europe a lot faster from a regulatory perspective than it happens here. So if you're using that as a harbinger of what's going to happen, then you've got a little bit of a preview, a crystal ball there.
Yes, exactly. And I share a similar personal opinion as well. And regardless of where you stand or regardless of where the regions are at, it is going to be paramount, especially as you think about these models were built on, by humans on data. So how you can, and then understanding which model, how it fired, and, having that defensible regulatory, position is going to be paramount as we go forward. All the great things that the industry is built on, to be able to have that transparency as we continue to accelerate it. So.
Yeah, no, that makes good sense. This has been a great conversation, Jake. I just want to wrap with a crystal ball conversation. Tying it back to that constant evolutionary mindset that you're never there. It's just there's no point in time. Look into your crystal ball and what do you see in the next 12 months? I'm not even going to say 1836 because I don't think anybody can do that. Next 12 months, we're sitting here with generative AI and then agentic, and what's next? What do you see next? And what do we have to be prepared for?
Yeah, it's a great question. We believe that it will be more of the acceleration and adoption of AI. So if you look internally, no forward-looking statements. Yeah, if you look just through our lens that I can speak more openly to, the agentic AI, whether it be an underwriting agent, the claims agent, licensing appointment agents, our investments and our roadmaps are really shaped around these, as it relates to both, having those maybe slower or lower adopters still be able to catch up quickly, because that's the table stakes of where they're at. So, and I think that's directionally where the industry is at. Whether it have the insurtech side, we do see more M&A activity picking up, which is there's pros and cons to that. Yet I believe that scale helps drive more investment across the industry and allows us to continue to benefit from that. But in a word, AI, but more specifically, adoption and then practical application for agentic that also has the guardrails. And I didn't mention, Appian's AI strategies are focused on private AI, keeping that data inside. I think that's also where you're going to see the next year the governance models that we were just
Right.
discussing that are really going to be, even more transparent and more baseline. Yet, what does it look like when the product is changing so fast and the capability so fast? So,
yeah, amen to that. Hardest question of the day, Jake. What did I not ask you that I should have?
oh man, I like it. Yeah, that's awesome. What did I ask you should have? Let's see. Didn't ask for my favorite sports team. That's okay because I'm not a big sports guy.
But you weren't going to say the Yankees anyway, so it didn't matter.
No, exactly. Yeah, no, I think you did a good job. It was really nice to hang out here with you. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jake. I really appreciate the time you carving out of your day to be here on this show. And thank you to our listeners and to our audience. Thank you for joining us on another episode of 5 Minutes. I hope you found this helpful, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you for joining this episode of 5 Minutes. If you've enjoyed our discussion, we'd love for you to share it with anyone else you think might find it interesting. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on and hit that bell to stay on top of the game with our practical 5-minute episodes. We look forward to seeing you again next week.